Hello, and happy Wednesday. Welcome to the Google Ads Fundamentals Bootcamp. We're almost halfway through the week already, after a search session on Monday, a display session yesterday, and then today we have our video and YouTube session for you. We also have 2 more sessions scheduled this week, a shopping session on Thursday and an app marketing session on Friday. So let's dive into today's session. As always, if you have any questions, you can ask them in the chat. I feel like most of you have seen this slide before, but just in case you're joining us for the first time today, I'm extremely pleased to meet you. My name is Christina, and I am a Google Ads and digital marketing trainer. I've been working in the Google Ads universe for 11 years now. I started right after I left university when I joined Google as an account strategist in the Dublin office. And fun fact, my first working day at Google was actually delayed by 2 days because the Icelandic volcano was spewing ash all over Europe, and flights were grounded for a little while because of that. And at the time, that seemed like a drama of epic proportions, but here we are. Wasn't so bad after all, wasn't it? And the wait was worth it. I obviously had a great time at Google, but after 2.5 years, decided to leave and work in in-house roles in different startups in Berlin, where I'm originally from. And then 4 years ago, I moved to London and became a digital marketing trainer and consultant. And my day-to-day work life looks actually very similar to what most of you do, probably. I manage campaigns for my clients and consult them on the digital marketing strategies. But then once in a while, there's an exciting day like today where I get to come back to Google and deliver a training. And that's how we find ourselves here today. Now, I would like all of you to take a moment and think back to the last thing that you've watched on YouTube. What did you watch? How long did you watch it for? And what device did you watch it on? For me, I spent actually the better part of Sunday watching a series called Paul Hollywood City Bakes. Paul Hollywood is a famous baker here in the UK, and he's also a judge on the Great British Bake Off, which is on right now. And in this series, he basically travels to cool cities all over the world, eats lots of cake and bread, and then also bakes some of the local specialties with local bakers and restaurant owners, which is a pretty good life, I think. So I really enjoy watching it, and I watched this on my TV screen in my living room, actually. Like I said, for the better part of Sunday. And I wasn't alone in watching lots of YouTube, that is for sure, because the average person in Germany watched over 40 minutes of YouTube per day in February 2021. And again, that number is similar all over the European continent, so probably also applies to your countries. And another trend that we've seen is that people actually watch more and more YouTube on their TV screens. That is the biggest and the fastest growing device category for YouTube. Let's have a look at what that means for us as advertisers. On Monday, we talked about digital ads in general and the search opportunity in particular, and how it's a great way of getting ourselves in front of a highly relevant audience at just the right moment. And it is, but even the best search campaign misses many undecided shoppers. Because if we look at the column on the left here, the big gray one, if that is everybody who is looking for our product or our service, we get in a good search campaign 10% of people to click through to our website, right? And 10% CTR is quite generous if I look at my own generic search campaigns. Yes, in a good campaign, I achieve that, but often my CTR is also lower. So there's already a large part of consumers that are actually in the market that are untapped because they're not clicking on our search ad. And then even of the ones who do click on our search ad, the large portion of them is not going to convert. So here in our calculation, we've assumed a 20% conversion rate, which again is very generous if we think of an e-commerce website, which again leaves most consumers that are in the market for our product or our service untapped. And it leaves a big opportunity. The good thing is the majority of these people are reachable on YouTube, around 85%, which again, is a very high reach. We talked about the display network marketing reach yesterday with 90%, 85% reach on YouTube is also very big. And there's another number that I always find very impressive when thinking of YouTube. And the last time I checked this actually was in 2018. So haven't checked it recently. But then YouTube was actually the second biggest search engine in the world, because Google was the biggest with where most searches happened. But then the place on the internet where the second largest number of searches happened, where people typed things into a search bar and got a result, was actually YouTube. And YouTube is also the content platform with the most engaged audience. 95% of YouTube ads play in view and with sound on, whereas the industry average viewability is 66%. And if you also create video ads for social media platforms, you will know that you will always have to create your ad in a way that it completely makes sense without sound also, because most people have their sound turned off when they scroll a newsfeed, whereas on YouTube, the sound is always on per default. And we also know from Nielsen's consumer neuroscience study that ads on YouTube receive 1.8 times more attention than ads on social media platforms, because it's a lean-in medium. People choose the content they watch, and that's also why they pay more attention to the ads and don't just scroll past it. And people don't just watch YouTube. YouTube also drives purchase decisions. We know that 55% of people search for a product on Google and then go on YouTube to learn more. And also 40% of people say that they purchase products that they discovered on YouTube. And again, this 40% is a number that I would remember very well if I was about to take my certification exam, because that was a question that I had on mine. So how do we make sure interested customers choose our brand or our client's brand when they come to YouTube to learn about products? And how do we expand our prospecting strategy to YouTube? First, we find the consumers with the greatest intent using Google's audience targeting. Then second, we capture their attention through compelling video content and use bidding strategies to reach our business goals. And third, we prove that it all works by measuring conversions and the brand impact of our advertising. And these three blocks are also the three things we're going to talk about in today's training. So first, we target users based on their searches, intent, and habits. Second, we convert them with video ad formats that drive action. And third, we measure how YouTube ad views or clicks drive conversions. We covered audience targeting in yesterday's display session, and everything we said then also applies to today, because YouTube is part of the Google Display Network. So on YouTube, as on display, we can leverage the strong intent signals that we get from users all over the Google properties. Of course, we have the intent signals from search, and we know what products they're looking for and what's on their mind and the things that they're actively searching. And then we also see them across all the other Google platforms several times a day. We know what they're up to and we know what they care about. We can reach people by action, intent, and interest. And a great way to visualize this is this consumer funnel, where the consumers at the bottom of the funnel, who we target based on action, are also most likely to convert or to take the action that we want them to take. And those are consumers who are on our remarketing lists, who are on our customer match list that we have uploaded into our Google Ads account, or similar audiences who are the statistical twins of people on those lists. Then if we go up the funnel and we target based on intent, we can target based on custom intent, which is built on past Google searches, and we just create our audience with keywords that people would have typed into Google. We can use Google's in-market categories, where intent basically has already been categorized into different product and service categories. And we can use live events like having a child, getting married, or buying a house, which also usually brings a lot of change and acquisitions with them that needs to be made. And then at the top of the funnel are the interests and habits, which we haven't really covered yesterday in too much detail. Affinities are when people are just interested in categories, or it's their hobby, but they don't have an active they don't have an active purchase process going on. So for example, I am a yogi. I am very likely to engage with yoga content or buy yoga clothes at any time in life, but I'm not constantly searching for a new yoga leggings. Yet I have a strong affinity, so it still wouldn't hurt to show me ads on the topic. And the second one is consumer patterns. That's just an example, is people who eat at fast food restaurants or like other types of restaurants. And usually the lower you are in the funnel, the more likely it is that people will take action, but also the fewer people are there. So the higher you go up in the funnel, the bigger is the audience that you can reach. As we saw on the last slide, for conversions, we should focus on lower funnel audiences. So target based on action or based on intent. And then if we want to widen our activities or target wider audiences, only then should we move up the funnel. When planning your campaigns and your strategies, you should keep in mind that different audiences will have different CPAs. So the audiences at the left of this spectrum are the same that you would find at the bottom of the customer journey or the user funnel. So custom intent audiences and remarketing audiences, the action-based ones. They typically yield the best CPAs, but these are also the smallest audiences, so you won't get a lot of conversions. And then as you move to the right or up the funnel, you will get more conversions, but you will also have to expect higher CPAs. And this brings us already to the end of the audience section of this training and the targeting section. So if you have any questions on that, pop them into the chat, and we're moving on to creatives. So let's have a look at the second part of this session, the creatives. Creative is what makes or breaks your campaign's success, because relevant video ads get 3 times the attention compared to the average video ad. And this is why you have to understand your audience and you have to know what they care about so that you can set yourself up for success. The fundamental principle is you must provide great content. People come to YouTube to watch great videos, not boring ads. So you have to give them that. Otherwise, your message will not land. And you can do that by giving them interesting content, but also by making sure your ads are optimized for digital platforms. And videos that are optimized for digital are actually quite different in terms of storyline and of cut from your traditional TV commercial or brand video. So in a traditional storyline, you would have an introduction, things start quite slowly, then a structure is established, then you have a peak or a surprise halfway or in the second half of the video, and then you get an offer, and then some branding and a call to action at the end. And if we think about today's consumer, whose attention is constantly pulled in all directions, we're simply not going to capture them with a storyline like this. So the modern storyline needs to have a strong intro and needs to capture people immediately. It has to have like subtle references to the brand quite early on in the video, because in case it gets skipped, you also want the consumer to at least have seen the brand. It's good if they have an unexpected twist at some point, and then not just one peak or surprise, but actually multiple peaks. So it has to go on and on and on and stay exciting. And then at the end, you can give them further action that interested parties can take. But the video itself should be an experience to watch. And I have an example of what this looks like from my everyday work. So one of my clients is a company that organizes conferences. And when I first started working with them, the video that they shared with me to promote the conference on YouTube had basically a colorful screen that had the conference name on it for the first 3-4 seconds. Then it was just showing like large images from the conference hall and the audience, but still without any substantial content. Then as the peak, they had some shots from the speakers and the speakers talking, and then a call to action asking people to buy tickets for the next conference. And straight away, I had to give some improvement suggestions to make sure that people would actually watch the video on YouTube, because it would just have been skipped straight away. So we needed a strong intro, for which we tried 2 different things. We took kind of like, for one version, we took a shot of the speaker kind of like delivering their key message that was ultimately why people came to the conference, to hear things like that. And then also, as another way of making a strong intro and getting people interested, we started with like a roaring applause, thinking that then people would be interested in what people were applauding to, right? And both actually worked quite well as an intro. And then the next step is, of course, we talked a bit about the conference and like had the logo in the background so that people learned what it was about, and then just hit them with really good pieces of content, like some testimonials, people saying what they've learned from the conferences, other smart insights that the speakers shared. And then at the end, we invited them to buy the tickets for the next year. And of course, this video performed much better than the video with the traditional storyline. Now, instead of me telling you more and more about how great video ads are made and showing it to you on slides, I have an actual video for you.
I am a relentlessly curious person, and so what inspires me is everything. The way that words and images come together to move us in all of its forms. I'm Ben Jones, I'm a creative director, and I work on a team called Unskippable Labs at Google. We run experiments in video content. We look at about 1,000 ads a month to say what are patterns of creative effectiveness that advertisers can take advantage of. When we partner with brands, all our experiments run in market. We don't do panels or focus groups or anything. Everything is live. Then we get the data and see what conclusions we can come to. Based on the experimentation, we see 4 primary opportunities in storytelling: visual language, narrative structure, tuning for audience, and creative systems. We see the opportunity to evolve the visual language that's used in ads, and some of these are very simple: tighter framing, faster pacing, use of large type supers, brightness and contrast. The second opportunity we see is around narrative structure, and it's building for attention. So you need to give them, we say, dessert first, or a punch in the face, a thing at the beginning that is like, there's a reason I should pay attention to this. The third opportunity is tuning for audience. Making creative choices to reflect who you are and what you're interested in improves creative response significantly. The last is, how are you sequencing ads, and what are the right mixtures of formats and forms, and how do you best deploy creative and media assets for maximum impact? Google is in this space because if clients' videos are better, then the whole platform is better. But I think especially within Google, there is this idea that with a big enough data set, we'll find enough patterns and we'll unlock the ability to figure out how every ad should work. The challenge with advertising is, as soon as you make an ad that follows all the rules change. So can machine learning help us? Absolutely. Bringing some data in can help creatives defend good ideas and make better work. It can help clients put more effective work in market, then they can take more risks. I think data is a tool like many tools, and there's a lot that it can teach us and a lot that it can show us, but it works with creativity, not to replace creativity. And so the only way, I think, to really be breakthrough as a brand is to be experimenting all the time.
I hope you get some ideas and insights from the video with Ben. There's a lot more content that the Unskippable Labs team have made that you can find on YouTube if you just search for Unskippable Labs. And this content I found really interesting to educate myself, but I also very often actually get asked by companies that I work with, or even video producers, whether I have some resources that can help them understand video for digital better. So that is usually the type of content that I would pass on to them, that they also really like and learn a lot from. In order to help us remember what makes great video ads, YouTube has developed the ABCD framework. A is for attract, so you want to have a strong induction into the video and use a good hook to draw the audience in. You want to highlight the brand early on, so that in case your video gets skipped, at least the brand has gotten seen, but it has to be like natural and thoughtful. C, you want to build a connection with the audience, so you have to maintain the attention of the viewer throughout the video through suspense audio, the correct tempo, and like lots of little peaks rather than just one big peak. And of course, you also want to drive action, so you should convey to the viewer what they should feel, think, or even do at the end of the video. So remember this ABCD framework, because I had quite a few questions about that on my exam, and it's also just a good rule of thumb to keep in mind when thinking about video ads and what all they should do and have. When creating your video ads, keep the device in mind for which the ad is intended. As a default, as everywhere on the internet nowadays, mobile first is a good thing to keep in mind. So videos have to work on mobile, but also remember TV screens are the largest growing device category on YouTube. And I can tell you this from my own experience. I have a client for whom I run the same campaign every summer, basically. Obviously, the creative and the messaging changes, but the budget and the audience and all other parameters stay pretty much the same. So I did a campaign last year, and then I also did a campaign this year in summer. And what I found is that in the 2020 campaign, 10% of all impressions were delivered on TV screens. And this year, the number went up to 35%, which also then the Google account manager who we did the campaign with confirmed that that was a development that she was seeing across different clients. And that's actually really good news, because what we also saw in the campaign is that the CPM, so the price that we paid for our ads, actually on YouTube went down a little year on year. Whereas on other platforms where we ran the campaign, the price only went up because the advertisers' competition increases. But because YouTube usage is still increasing, or at least in this campaign, it was actually still very efficient for us to run the campaign there. As your ads are probably going to show across different devices, you have to make sure they work for all of them. And here are a few tips for making better mobile videos. The first one is you want to use a smaller image frame. So here in the example where the moon is in the screen, that's a large image frame because there's a lot of space around the moon. Whereas on the right side, we have the sun, and the sun actually takes up most of the screen. That means that it has a smaller image frame. Then you want to make brighter recordings because they are easier to watch. Like, you don't want a very dark screen. The third tip is you want larger text and graphics, because if they're being shown on a phone, they're going to be very, very small. So a best practice is when you receive creative, look at it in the original size that it's going to be displayed, and don't look at it on your desktop in full screen mode, because that is not how the user is going to see it. Some text and maybe sometimes like a table or even a product that has a lot of text on it is not going to be visible very well. And as people get older, as I also experience myself now, like eyesight gets a little worse and arms get shorter and shorter. And ideally, you want your audience to be able to see your video without having to take out their glasses to watch this. Like a 16-point font size is kind of like a good rule of thumb to have in your videos and also on your website. And you want faster paced sections, because somebody who's on their phone is likely to have a lot of other things going on, so you don't want them to be distracted. And a fast-paced video is going to keep them engaged. This concludes our section on creatives. And we're moving on to look at the different ad formats that we have to advertise on YouTube. Which ad formats you include in your campaign depends on your objectives. If your objective is awareness, then the right formats would either be a must-have, TrueView for reach ads, bumper ads, or unskippable ads, which are either 15 or 20 seconds long. If your objective is consideration, then TrueView discovery or TrueView in-stream ads are the right formats. And if your campaign objective is to drive actions, then TrueView for action is the right ad format for you. TrueView means that an ad is skippable, so the user can choose not to watch it after 5 seconds. And the advantage of that is that you pay only for the view if somebody actually chooses to watch it for either 30 seconds or if the ad is shorter than 30 seconds for the whole duration of the video. And that's also a great way to introduce video advertising to advertisers who might be a bit on the fence about it, because they only pay when somebody watches the video. So there's much less to lose than if they pay for an impression. The same way that we have different audiences that are right for different business objectives, we also have different ad formats for each business objective. So we have formats that lend themselves more to reach, like TrueView for reach or bumper ads. And then we also have formats that lend themselves more to conversions, like TrueView for action. So let's go through all of these one by one. The first one is TrueView for reach, which is a skippable video ad. There's no limit in video length with skippable ads, but we recommend to keep it short and sweet. And it uses CPM-based bidding and also optimizes for impressions if you get asked in an exam about what TrueView for Reach optimizes for. The next format is bumper ads. Bumper ads are non-skippable video ads, and they are maximum 6 seconds long, so very short and breezy. And before the user realizes they're seeing an ad, the ad is almost over already, but still long enough to land the message. Bumper ads also use CPM-based bidding and are paid for on a cost per impression basis. And then we have the YouTube must-add. The YouTube must-add is the Ferrari of video ads because it appears on the YouTube homepage and it's non-skippable. Companies that often use the must-add would be movie launches or big product launches of like cars or like products with like a really wide appeal. And these are paid for by impression, and they're also targeting and frequency capping options in order to manage who sees the ad. But they usually they are used to spread a message far and wide. Here's a beautiful overview of some of the things we just discussed. So for each marketing objectives, we have the video formats that are best suited to them, which audiences should be targeting, and how the bidding works for each of them, and also how the impact can be measured, but we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail later. And in order to compare our YouTube video campaigns to those video campaigns we run on other platforms, it's important to understand how the Media Rating Council defines viewability, because that means that 50% of the ad pixels have to be visible for at least 2 seconds. And as you can imagine, that is the case for most of the YouTube ads at all times. So compare what that looks like for other video campaigns you run. We've had a look at the ad formats that help us drive awareness and consideration. And now I want to have a special look at TrueView for Action, because that is the ad format that we will use to drive performance. So this is what a TrueView for Action ad looks on mobile in portrait mode. So we have the video in the top half of the screen, and then underneath there is a consistent companion banner that shows during the ad, but also throughout the video, even if the ad is skipped. So even if the user chooses not to watch the video, the companion banner will still show, and the user can take action later if they want to. This companion banner is auto-generated, and what you can do is you can customize the blue button, the text in the blue button, but it's a 10-character max, so you have to be very creative and deliver your message in quite a few letters. When a user sees a TrueView for Action ad on a mobile device in landscape, so in full screen mode, a call to action overlay will appear in the beginning. It will show for 5 seconds and will then be minimized into the corner. And this call to action overlay cannot be customized, so it's auto-generated. If a user doesn't skip the ad on a mobile device and chooses to watch the whole ad, at the end of it, they will see an end card that remains on the screen for 5 seconds, encouraging them to take action. And of course, if they're not choosing to watch the ad, they're also not going to see this end card. And the end card is auto-generated, and the text on the end card will be consistent with the text in the companion banner. If a user watches a TrueView for Action video on desktop, there will be a persistent companion banner that shows up right next to the video for the duration of the ad, and also for the duration of the video that the ad is showing on. So the user can take action also later. And a call to action overlay will show up in the video for 5 seconds and then will be minimized into the corner for the remainder of the ad, the same way it does on the mobile device in landscape mode. And the companion banner, you can either upload a 300 by 60 image to show there, or otherwise the companion banner will be auto-generated from with images from your YouTube channel. So I usually choose to upload my own, because then I can control the messaging on them. And when a user chooses to watch the TrueView for Action video on desktop, they also get an end card at the end of the video, which remains on the screen for 7 seconds after the ad finishes playing. And like on mobile, it's not going to show if the user skips the ad, and all the details are consistent with the end screens on mobile. This brings us to the end of this part of the training about ad formats, and I am now going to move on to the next section, in which I will create a campaign live in my demo account for you. We've looked at audiences, at campaign objectives, and at creative formats. So now is the time to put all that into practice and create a video campaign. So always when we create a campaign, we click on New Campaign in the overview or on the plus button in the Campaigns tab. But we're going New Campaign right now. And step one is also always choosing a campaign objective, which we should always do. We've talked about objectives earlier, and that is just because that gives the system more insight in what we're trying to achieve. And if it knows, then it can help us do that. So depending on what the goal is, if you're looking to drive actions, you can choose either sales or leads, or also just website traffic if you don't have any conversions. Or if you want product and brand consideration or brand awareness and reach, you select that. And then app promotion and local store visits are actually like separate campaign types. So don't choose those. For the sake of this demonstration, I'm actually going to go without a goals guidance, which is against my own advice. But the reason I'm doing that is depending on what campaign goal you choose, the system is going to make some selections for you already in the settings. And I, of course, want to show you all the options, which is why I go without a goal. Then I select my campaign type, which in this case is video, because it's all about video today. And then if we had conversion tracking set up in this demo account, it would ask us which conversion we want to optimize for. So we'll use our imagination and pretend that this has the right conversion selected for us. And then we can select a campaign subtype. We have 6 campaign subtypes on YouTube at the moment. The first one, and that's the one we're ultimately going to go with, is the custom video campaign, because again, we can customize all our own settings. The next option is the non-skippable in-stream. And non-skippable in-stream is an option that like brand-oriented advertisers usually use if they just want to get their message out there. They pay for impressions, and the campaign gets optimized for CPM, because that's how they're planning their campaign. So we haven't discussed that in detail throughout the slides, because TrueView and like skippable ads are a better user experience, but it is also possible to run non-skippable ads, and it's important to keep this in mind for your exams, because you get some questions around that. Then there are outstream ads, which aren't really used a lot, but there are some exams questions, so I'll quickly explain it. So outstream are ads that don't run on YouTube, but like outside of YouTube. Maybe that's where the name is coming from. I'm not entirely sure. You also, bit by bit CPM and reach people on mobile devices with that. The next option is driving conversions. That is like if you want to run a YouTube for Action campaign, this is the option you would choose. We don't have conversion tracking set up in our demo account, so we can't do that. But I'll show you how to create a call to action and everything in the custom video campaign. So you'll experience some of this in this demo as well. If you have like a more complex story to tell that has different videos or even different formats, and you want them to show in a particular sequence, you can use the add sequence option. And if you're a retailer and you have a merchant center account, then you can also use the shopping campaign subtype, where you select your video, but then you also can almost like tag products from your merchant center into your videos. If you're running ads for a retailer, or you are a retailer, this is a great option. So as I said, we're going to go with custom video campaign, and I'm going to go to the next step, which is setting up all the campaign settings. So we're doing YouTube London. Courses, because we're advertising dog courses today. The bid strategy that we can choose here is cost per view or target CPM, just because of the custom settings. So if you wanted to do a TrueView for Action campaign or YouTube for Action campaign, you would have chosen a different subtype, and then you would be able to also select target CPA or maximize conversions. So we're going with maximum cost per view. Then we have the campaign total, the budget that we can set up, and on YouTube, we can actually give either a daily budget or a campaign total. So on most other campaign types, we can only give daily budgets, right? But on YouTube, we can also do a campaign total. So if we do a campaign total, then we also need to give the campaign an end date, because otherwise the system obviously can't calculate how much it's going to spend on a daily basis. But we're going to do a daily budget. Then we can select the networks where we want our campaigns to run on. The YouTube search results and YouTube videos are a no-brainer in this case, because that's where it's a YouTube campaign that we're running. There's also the option to run our ads on video partners on the display network. I usually don't check this option by default, because what can happen is that the video partners, because there's less competition, are much cheaper. And then what can happen is, especially if you bid on cost per view, is that all your ads actually get delivered on a partner website and not on YouTube itself. And if you're not aware of that, then that's a bit of a rough awakening. So I typically uncheck this box. If I leave it checked, then I must be very careful and check where my ads appear and that I'm happy with that. Especially if I'm working for a client who then later will ask me, oh, so where on YouTube did my ads appear? And then I look into the report and I'm like, hey, actually not on YouTube. That's not a conversation you want to have. So be mindful of this one. The locations, because we're doing like a regional offering right now, the location is just London. And then the language that our customers speak is English. And here we can define where we want our ads to show. So we have the option to make content exclusion, similarly to what we saw yesterday on the Google Display Network. Just to make sure there's some aspect of brand safety. So there's classified already. There's expanded inventory, which covers pretty much everything that is monetizable on YouTube. Then there's the standard inventory, which is also the recommended option. So that has some brand filters, some filters that are applied on language and content. And then there's also limited inventory, which is limited. So there's higher competition on this, which is why I would usually go with the standard one. But it depends how sensitive you as an advertiser or your client, if you're an agency, is on the topic. It might make sense to go with limited inventory as well. Then you have the option to exclude maybe embedded YouTube videos or live streaming videos. And you also can say if you want to exclude certain digital content labels. So for example, if you're advertising like a family-friendly product, and you really don't want to appear on these like content that is made for other audiences, you can exclude them. But really, I usually don't bother with this section, to be honest. You can also add related videos, which they will appear below the video ad, and just give more of an experience and more options to learn more about your message. We don't have any, so I'll leave this. And then we have the usual additional campaign settings. So if we were running a big campaign and we were making different creatives for different devices, then we could select that here. Say this campaign runs only on TV screens, and then maybe we have one that runs only on all other devices, but we're not doing that now. We can also apply a frequency cap. So this depends on your bid strategy, actually. If you're doing like a YouTube for Action campaign and you're maximizing for conversions or using target CPA or even cost per view, the system is itself going to understand when somebody is not going to watch your video and they're just going to stop showing it to you. But it's also, if you want some manual control over it, you can either cap the impression frequency and limit how many times an ad in this, ads from this campaign are shown to the same user, or you can cap the view frequency to limit how many times somebody actually sees it. It makes, like, I would, if I was to use one, I would cap the impression frequency. Like if you have a TrueView ad and like if somebody has seen it, if you've tried to, like, if you've given them impression maybe like 3 times per day and they haven't watched it, they're probably not going to watch it. So that is an option that you can do. Or but if you're optimizing for cost per view, like YouTube is not going to try to show an ad to somebody several times. If they're not going to watch it, then it's a wasted opportunity for YouTube. So then they're just going to show a different ad. So it's not always necessary, but it's good to know that you have this option. You can then also set your ad schedule if you want to. But again, if you're using smart bidding, then that is going to take the best times of day into account to deliver your ads. Anyways, you can add some third-party measurement as well if you want. And then we create our ad group because all the campaign settings are now done. So we set the ad group name. And I always set ad group names by the targeting that I'm applying in the ad group. Like that's just how I like my tracking and like my structures to work. So I'm calling this in-market dogs. And then here we have the 2 different options of how we can target users. So we have the option to either target people, like an audience, or we have the option to target the content where we want our ads to show. And it's different strategies. Usually we use the audience strategy because that it doesn't necessarily matter if somebody is what somebody exactly is watching right now. It's more like, is it relevant? Is the person relevant? And not, is the video context relevant? So it's, and also audience, like we talked about signals very extensively. That is just the more sophisticated targeting technology, and that is also the targeting technology that scales. So we usually go with that. There's also the option to target the context. So you say where you want your ads to show. So you can select like specific videos or specific channels, or you can also define the topic of your videos by either picking a topic from like a category of topics or by giving a keyword cluster that defines this. But we want to use like audience targeting. So we could set like our demographics here if we had some specifics that we want to use. It is very important to not unselect the unknown ever, because that is quite a large group of users, and that's just like Google doesn't know a lot about them, but that doesn't make them like worse users necessarily. I have some clients who say, oh no, but we want to be sure whether they're male or female so that we can like evaluate properly. But by doing that, they are losing out on a lot of impressions, and they're just like unknown users, but that doesn't make them more or less valuable. So and it depends on the campaign exactly, but it can be between 30 to 50%, I think, from the back of my head is what I've seen over campaigns that I've run this year on YouTube and on the GDN. So that's quite a large portion. Again, potentially brand advertisers might be focusing on these ones, leaving the competition on these ones much lower. So that's why these are usually more expensive. This is usually cheaper. So you want to include them all, don't exclude them. It's the important message here. And here we have our audiences. So let's see. We can either search for something or we can also browse. And here again, you see all the different types the different ways that users are classified. So we're going for live events because there is the option of recently added a dog to the household, which is perfect because I'm advertising dog courses. And if I remember correctly, there are also in-market audiences for dogs. No, not live events. Here we are. There is an in-market audience for dog behavior training. That is the one that I was looking for. And then there's also an in-market audience for puppy pictures, care, and toys. All that is information that is very, or these are obviously audiences that are useful to me. Here we go, we'll be using those. We can then also use audience expansion. And in a perfect world, we might have separate ones for these separate ad groups, actually, for in-market audiences and for the live events one. But for simplicity's sake, in this campaign, I'm now adding them all to one ad group. Then we can use audience expansion if we're happy with the performance of this. So I would add this on later. And we have our audiences set. Then we select our minimum, our maximum cost per view bid. I haven't run cost per view campaigns recently. So ask your colleagues what a good bid is, or your Google Account Manager. I would, like, in the more like not unreasonable, like more like a while ago, like I would run where like 10 cents or 10p would usually be a good cost per view for me. Then we create our video ad. So the video for the video ad actually has to be on YouTube. So we're looking for this now. Video, and here we can select what video ad format we want. We're choosing a skippable in-stream ad because that is the video that we want to run. There's also the ad format video discovery ad, and video discovery ads appear on the YouTube search results or next to related videos or on the YouTube homepage. So they're also TrueView ads, but they don't appear in the stream. Somebody has to actually like click on them to watch them, and that's how you get charged for a view. They look slightly different. So if you want them, you need to create a different ad group for them. For you, it's mainly also important to know that they exist because you might get asked about them in your certification exam. Of course, you would want to know the answer when you do. So, yeah, but we're doing skippable. If we had chosen a maximum CPM as the bid strategy, we would also have been able to use bumper ads here. We add our final URL, which then also brings up the display URL automatically, and then we can add a call to action to the video, and we can, because we are advertising dog courses, we'll say book now, and then we have 15 characters to put a headline, courses, so we'll just say new courses. And that is that. And then here we have the option to either upload a companion banner or use one, or the system will generate one automatically from like our channel. I don't have one, so I can't upload one. Usually I probably would. And then we give the ad a name, and we go on to create our campaign. Continue. And here we are. Now we go into the last part of today's session, which is about conversion measurement. In order to track the conversions from your TrueView for Action campaigns and all of your display and video activity, for that matter, correctly, you should be using the Google Ads site-wide conversion tracking and not rely simply on Google Analytics. So you can implement the Google Ads conversion tag either directly into your website, or you can use the Google Tag Manager. But you want to use the Google Ads tracking because Google Analytics only counts click-based conversions. And if a conversion happens after a view of an ad, it won't be able to show you that. There are two ways in which a conversion can be attributed back to your YouTube campaigns. The first one is the classic click-through conversion. So a user watches your ad and clicks on one of the interactive ad elements and then makes a conversion, very similar to a search ad. that would show up in the conversions column in your account. The second one, which is special for YouTube, is an engaged view conversion. So if a user watches either 10 seconds of your video or the whole video, if that is shorter, and makes a conversion, then that also shows up in your conversions column. The conversion window by default is 30 days for the click-through conversions and 3 days for the engaged view conversions, but you can adjust that in your account. Here's a reminder, conversions in the conversion column are the ones that your bid strategies actively optimize for. So both click-through conversions and engaged view conversions will be counted towards the conversion total and will be taken into account by your smart bidding strategies. And then there's a third scenario where a user watches your ad for less than 10 seconds and then converts, and that will get counted as a view-through conversion in the view-through conversions column. And this also only works if they convert either directly or through a non-Google Ads channel, because if they later then click on a different ad that you have in your account, that action will override the view-through. So when you're evaluating your campaigns, you should always include view-through conversions or get an idea of how much they're worth to you, because other ad platforms measure and include them by default. So you could sell yourself short if you don't include them against other platforms and other campaigns and not understand the full value that your YouTube ads are actually giving you. The million-dollar question is, how do we choose the right conversion action? It can be very simple. If on your main business objective conversion, like your purchases in your online shop or your leads, if you do lead generation, you have more than 35 conversions per week, it's pretty straightforward. You just use this conversion to optimize your display and YouTube campaigns against, and leave all the settings as they are. If you want to track additional upper funnel conversions, you of course can to observe them, but make sure not to include them in the conversions column. If you have less than 35 conversions per week, or your CPAs are too high to allow the right target CPA to budget ratio, because as we heard yesterday, we should have a budget of 10 to 15 times the target CPA on our display and YouTube campaigns, we might want to consider a different conversion action. So one that is slightly higher up in the user journey. So for an online shop, this could be an add to cart conversion, or if it's a lead gen advertiser, it could be somebody who just views the form instead of submits the form. Because on these earlier steps in the customer journey, we will have a lot more data, which gives the algorithm more data to optimize towards. And because it happens more often, the CPAs will also be lower for these. So the total budget required for the campaigns will be lower. If the second scenario applies to you and you're choosing to optimize your YouTube campaigns for a different conversion than all the other conversions in your account, you now have the option to use the campaign level conversion setting to actually implement this at a campaign level, as I also showed you in the demo. And that means that you can now run your YouTube and your display and your search campaigns all from the same account, because you set the conversion that you're optimizing for at an individual campaign level. When you set this up, keep in mind that the recommendation that the system gives you for a target CPA is probably off, because that will still consider the original conversion that is set up at the account level. So you have to calculate what the right target CPA value is for you. And because you're putting a completely new setting into the system, obviously the algorithms also will need 7 to 14 days to learn and to adjust. We've seen the different ways in which we can measure the conversions that your TrueView for Action campaign drives. But in order to understand the full impact and the full value that TrueView campaigns bring to your business or your client's business, you should measure beyond conversions, because TrueView campaigns don't only drive actions, they also impact other channels, and they will also influence consumer awareness about your product or your brand. These are the 3 levels at which our YouTube campaigns can drive value for our businesses. The first one is driving action, and we've just had a look at that very extensively, how we measure conversions and view through conversions for our campaign. The second one is how it impacts other channels. So looking how its impact is amplified across different platforms. So within our Google Ads account, we can look at cross-network reports and understand whether it has caused any assisted conversions. And we should also have a look at what it does to our brand search within Google, but also to our organic search. So look at Search Console and see whether our brand queries have gone up, and also have a look at Google Trends, because you can usually see spikes in brand search volume after doing video campaigns. And then the last bit is influencing awareness, where you can use the viewability report in your account. And if you're running a larger campaign, then you can also do a brand lift survey, which your Google Account Manager is going to help you with and set up for you. But what a brand lift survey does is, if you're spending a certain minimum budget, then it is following up your campaign with some questions that it will show to users that have seen your ad, and it will also show it to users that have not seen your ad. And then in your account, you can see the uplift that your ads have created. So you can see, actually, users who have seen my ad had an increase in brand awareness as compared to users who have not seen my ad, which is a brilliant tool to report on to your clients, and then that the client can also use to report in their organization to prove the value of YouTube. If you're measuring the action that you drive, you should focus on both the conversions and the view-through conversions. And in your Google Ads account, you have the option to add custom columns. So you can create a column where you add the conversions and the view-through conversions together. And then you can also create a new CPA column where you take the cost and you divide it by the total conversions, so that you can evaluate the full performance of your TrueView campaign and compare it to other channels. That concludes the third block of the session today. By now, you know everything you need to know about audience targeting, about good video creative and ad formats, and about understanding your performance and measuring conversions on YouTube. And you're well equipped to take your video ads certification exam. We'll send you a feedback form later today, so please let us know how you found the session today. I, of course, hope you enjoyed it. I certainly did. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you again tomorrow for the shopping session. Have a great day.